Hello and welcome to the virtual edition of the Energy Leadership Conclave 2022. I'm Manisha Nair Dhawan, the content head for PowerGen India and Indian Utility Week, India's premier energy business platform. Organized by ITN Media in association with our international partners, Clarion Events, the Energy Leadership Conclave is bringing together policymakers, regulators, industry titans, experts, and nearly thousands of qualified professionals from the global energy industry to discuss, deliberate, and explore pathways for India's exciting journey to clean energy in the post COVID arena. The conclave is hosted on our AI-powered virtual energy community of over 6,000 elite members from the power generation, transmission and distribution, and allied sectors. At the recently held COP26 in Glasgow, the Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi pledged that India will achieve net zero emissions by 2070. He upped India's targets for installed renewable energy capacity from 450 gigawatts to 500 gigawatts by 2030 and said that 50% of India's total electricity would be generated by renewable energy sources by 2030. Now, despite being a developing nation with a large population base, India's promise towards reducing carbon emissions is commendable, and transformation of India's energy sector will have to be accelerated to meet these lofty targets. In February 2022, the Union Budget announced which was announced by the Honorable Finance Minister Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, that the government is planning to come out with a battery swapping policy with interoperability standards for electric vehicles, one amongst the several policy initiatives that would further strengthen the foundations of India's clean energy industry. That said, our investments in renewable energy keeping pace with the required capacity additions. After seeing the recent energy outages in Europe, are we planning smart grids to avoid pitfalls of variable supply? Are regulatory reforms being undertaken at a speed to assist recovery in the failing health of state discoms? The Energy Leadership Conclave will address some of these key aspects in India's transformation towards decarbonization while exploring comprehensive, cheaper, and scalable solutions for India's next generation digital grid. From high level panels with policymakers, regulators, experts, and decision makers to understand the next big opportunity in India's energy sector. A kick-starting Indian energy industry's conversations in 2022, the conclave's inaugural session brings together leading thought leaders to share the exclusive insights on the impact of the pandemic, state of energy transition, and transformational market reforms, unpacking the industry's priorities in the post-pandemic energy landscape. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome and thank our esteemed dignitaries for joining us in this inaugural session. I'm sure your vision on how India's power sector can undertake inclusive transformation, which will in itself aid recovery and further growth of our country, would be of immense value for our audience and the industry at large. For the first keynote session of the day, I'm honored to welcome Shri Prashant Jain, Managing Director, GE Power India Limited. Mr. Jain has diverse industry experience in the industry in the energy sector, including renewables, and has held management positions in oil and gas, power, and renewable energy, and has served organizations like Siemens, Schneider Electric, and more. I would request Mr. Jain to please address the audience.
Very good morning, everyone. And thank you, Anisha, for the kind introduction. I would like to thank PowerGen to bring together the esteemed panelists together for the discussion on the changing energy landscape. I guess the why energy landscape needs to change is obvious, but I would still like to state that today, in the top 3 most severe risks identified for the next 10 years, climate action, failure, extreme weather, biodiversity loss are the top 3. And despite the optimistic scenario of COP26 commitments, net zero targets announced by 129 countries span for around 2050, 2060, and with India being at 2070. So to address these global landscape on disruption being created by this transformation towards sustainability, I think it's a good transition, and therefore the energy sector has to adapt to this transformation. When we look at this transition over the next almost 3 decades, there are 3 to 5 decades worldwide, India has a key role to play. Today, India is having dubious distinction of having 11 out of 12 globally most polluted cities in the world, with Delhi being ranked most polluted city in the world. India is number 1 in SOx emissions and number 2 in deaths due to air pollution, with 1.7 million deaths per year, and number 4 in global GHG emissions. And India power sector accounts for 50% of CO2 emissions, 33% for SOx emissions, 14% for NOx emissions, and 5% for SPM emissions. That is the significant contribution India has in the global pollution or environmental landscape. And we in India have a very strong role to play in the next 5 to 7 decades to shape this transformation towards a greener, safer future for all of us. And this is a legacy all of us are responsible to shape jointly. What is needed then in future to achieve these net zero targets? Well, globally, 129 countries have declared net zero. Some countries are in advanced stages and some are yet in early stages and have started this journey towards transformation towards net zero. But there is a R&D amount funding for developing fuel technologies today is still very low. And therefore, it is very important to deploy emission technologies, fuel technologies, and new integration and storage technologies to make an integrated energy available to transform to the bridge. Developed worlds have taken significant steps. Now, speaking for India, in India, we have an ambitious goal to provide 50% of electricity by 2030 from renewable sources. On the other hand, we still will provide 50% of electricity in 2030 from fossil and coal-powered power plants. And therefore, in the next 5 to 10 years, it is very important to make sure that these plants have best-in-class emission control equipments to enable sustainable transformation and act as a bridge. So what we need in India is a bridge from today's fossil and coal-fueled energy economy towards a sustainable renewable economy. And in that bridge, there are twin elements. On one side, the rapid acceleration of renewable energy, which is on track, and there are several good measures announced in the budget as well to enable acceleration into this area. On the other side, we still have a long reliance on the existing fossil powered plants. And this reliance, since it exists on existing fossil power plants, it is our responsibility to ensure we follow the new environment emission guidelines and implement all the emission technologies of the existing power plants. Number 1, therefore, best-in-class emission standards on the existing power plants for SOx, for NOx, and for carbon particulate emissions. That's, in my view, a very important step to enable the bridge. The second important step from the existing fossil power plants is to enable the integration, which means flexibility and integration of enabling the storage technologies, integration of green technologies, methanol, etc., into the existing power landscape. That is very crucial to enable this bridge by the time we have the right size and scale of 500 gigawatts plus on the grid to have a much more greener power for all of us. In terms of enabler for this, my view, the enabler would be that today we have a focus on cost. The cost of power, either triggered by politics or triggered by social requirements of the society, or by all our choices and needs on how much are we willing to pay. This is the cost of electricity, either from the regulations or from at home or the industry. That's cost of electricity. In my view, when we balance that out with the price that all of us will have to pay, eventually in terms of the damage to the environment or a potential to ownership of what we can do to create the good environment for all of us together is where we need integrated solutions that consider both the cost and the price of moving towards sustainable energy landscape. Therefore, this is exciting transformation time. We have esteemed speakers speaking right after me who will address the exciting technologies that are being launched and brought into the grid and to enable this transformation. And we will have several sessions over the next hours, which will address this energy landscape. And super exciting time to be into this phase, shape the future of sustainable energy. And we at GE Power India are very proud to be a part of this transformation to enable this bridge from where we are today towards the sustainable future. Thank you, Alisha, and wishing you all the best, PowerGen and team, and my esteemed speakers. Looking forward to your thoughts on this transformation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jain, for your very inspiring words early in the morning. This really peps up everyone listening into you because the future for India's energy sector looks very promising and exciting. I'm now pleased to welcome Shri Shah, CEO and whole-time director, IndiGrid, who has been instrumental in setting up IndiGrid, India's first infrastructure investment trust in the power transmission sector. I would request Mr. Shah to please deliver the keynote address.
Thank you, Anisha, and thank you everyone for joining today. Good morning to all of you. And I think it is a topic which we hear and talk a lot more often versus, let's say, a decade ago or more. And I think that is pertinent to the fact that the amount of pollution and, in general, incremental damage to environment that is getting caused is increasing. And as the world goes towards COP26 goals or even approaches towards that, I would just like to state one thing which most of the people at COP26 or elsewhere miss out is that we have one world, and carbon saved anywhere in the world is going to be important because the environment is still one. An Indian carbon or a US carbon or a China carbon is no different, and emissions generated by any country is going to damage the entire universe. It's not the only India's environment or only US environment is going to remain damaged. It is going to be the entire world which is going to get impacted by that. And that is one thing which I would like to state that India and many other players needs to start pursuing very actively, because yes, we are incrementally the largest or first couple of largest emission increasing countries. However, we are still a very small part of the overall world. But India does have a potential to play a very important role in terms of stopping incremental emissions, partly because we are the largest, partly because we are blessed with the sun, and partly because we are committing towards that. Keeping that in mind, I think all the commitments that have been made, I would like to repeat by different political parties as well as the governments. I think fundamentally there are a few drivers for India which nudges us towards taking action in this direction. The first one being energy and transport are the two largest emitters of carbon and other emissions in India. And these two sectors also tend to be most dependent on imports, whether it is import of oil and gas, whether it is import of coal or other technologies. Now, for a country like India, which is a growing economy and where the sun is plenty of and free of cost, it is important that we utilize this resource to not only channelize in the normal electricity space, but also on transport. A decade ago, this was a dream. And now with the new technologies, what is being in place, I would say we are scratching the surface of EV. And we are looking at the next 2 or 3 decades of a major transformation with respect to transport and electricity as sector being merged. And if that is something which is possible with technology support, there are a lot more impacts on a positive side for India. The first one being development of industry in India for both manufacturing and services around energy transition. This is one sector where I would say India hasn't lost the game, and the technology is evolving, and this is the right time for the country to invest in development of these technologies, not just adoption, which will result into a lot more employment and growth opportunities for the country, both for manufacturing and services. Second, if we can tap in even a partial fraction of the true energy available to us via solar and other renewable energy, we have ability to change the geopolitical equations in a different direction by not really dependent on oil and gas to the extent the country is today, and which has far-reaching implications with respect to fiscal deficit, capital available to grow, capital available to invest in infrastructure, and a lot more. So we are at a juncture where I say a lot of things are falling in place in a way that it can drive a decadal growth for the sector in India. The first one being the technology is growing fast. And even on today's terms, for most of the use cases, it is at grid parity, and it is at the cost at which you and I and industry pays at their meters. The generation, including, let's say, storage, is cheaper than that, which means that there is something that we need to ponder over and plan a transition over the next 2 decades of complete movement towards a net zero environment, which means largely investment towards technologies which will reduce our dependence on coal, oil, and gas. And I think that is one big transition that we see happening. Along with that, I think what I would like to commend the current regulatory setup, etc., is that a lot of important, difficult decisions with respect to change in the sector are being taken, including delicensing of distribution, separation of wire from power, and many others. However, these are all directional decisions, and it needs to be seen through. As a country, we are facing many other challenges with respect to these reforms not being pushed through. But I think we do not have any other alternative for the sake of environment, for the sake of economy, but to push through these reforms within the power sector, which will enable the next level of growth in the electricity sector, which would gel well with the net zero goal of the country. And I think this is something a lot of things are coming together for us. And if we are able to, as a country, take advantage of this opportunity at the right time, I am very positive over the next 3 decades, we would become a net zero country and contribute to net zero global goals as well. I think that's all from my side. I think a lot of people have come together today, a lot of industry experts and veterans who know much more about the technology and solar. And we will look forward to hear all of you and set the ball rolling for the next 3 decades of growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shah, for your words. And we hope that this platform will be one where there'll be a lot of collaboration, discussion also coming to, and collaboration between those on this platform to come up with new solutions that will be efficient and tailor-made for our country. Thank you so much for your words, and thank you for joining us. We are very privileged to have with us Shri Vijay V. Namjoshi, Chief Generation, Tata Power, who will deliver their next keynote address. Mr. Namjoshi is a mechanical engineer who joined Tata Power in the year 1983 as a trainee. He has worked more than 34 years in various functions of the company like Trombay, MMG, ERP, Methon, mechanical, special projects, O&M, etc. He also held the position of Chief Geographer and the Chief Executive Officer of Coastal Gujarat Power Limited. Please welcome Mr. Namjoshi.
Yeah, thank you, Anisha, and good morning to everyone who has joined. At the outset, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to Pajan for giving this opportunity to speak at this virtual conclave on evolving new energy landscape. I think it's most relevant in the present context, looking at India's exciting energy transition while adopting sustainable solutions for digital age, decarbonized power system. I think in India, the energy transition is in various stages of transformation. And let me try to talk from the utility perspective and how Tata Power is trying to be there. What we think is going forward, instead of being just a generating company, we are looking at an energy service provider in future. And we feel 3Ds are going to be very important for all of us. One is decarbonization, second is decentralization, and third is digitalization, as what Mr. Prashant Jain touched upon. And I think the countdown for decarbonization has just started. As Tata Power, we are the first Indian utility to declare that henceforth we will not be adding any coal-fired power plants, and we'll be concentrating only on renewable energy going forward. And we'll look forward to decommission all our thermal power plants before 2050, well before India's commitment of 2070, but we're looking at somewhere before 2050 to be out of the polluting thermal power plants going forward. As the earlier speakers talked about, renewable energy is a big thing going forward. But at this point in time, this energy is not continuous and it is intermittent. And the solution on storage is still evolving. But what we are looking at is the battery energy storage should be there in the next decade, and possibly by 2050, we should be able to get a complete solution with the utility scale renewable power along with storage too, so that we can come out of thermal power stations totally. As I said, I'm from utility sector. The new thermal energies, new solar power plants is really pushing pressure on the existing coal power plants, because the way they were conceptualized to have a base load station that is moving out, and they are moving into the cyclic operating modes. And that brings the second D of digitalization and technologies, which would make the flexible operation viable, is what as a utility we are looking for, and companies like GE and others are helping us to do that. We need to adjust to the new rules of the game, and at Tata Power, we're looking at adopting various digital initiatives, looking at taking help of AI/ML, because digital twins and other such exciting technologies, to see that how we can make the thermal operations suitable with the present flexible operation that is expected to happen in the near future, when we are moving towards more and more renewable energy sector. As I just talked on storage technologies, that is battery energy storage, I think we are the first utility to have a first utility scale energy storage system, which is in operation for last 3 years in Delhi. And also I'm excited to share with all of you that we also have a 50 megawatt large scale battery energy storage system, which we are installing in the place like Leh Ladakh. We are also looking at the pump storage facility on storage, because that's fortunately we also done hydro stations, and we feel going forward, we can't just be depending upon battery storage, but we also need to look at the pump storage options. And India being blessed with a lot of hydropower, and there are very good options which are available, and we should be looking at this power source also, not just to depend on battery storage, since we can take advantage of the facilities and the geo solution that we have in the country. The third D, which I would like to touch upon, is the decentralization. And we feel going forward with the presence of solar power, there's a great opportunity to have microgrids, solar power microgrids, and have a combination of solar, wind, and maybe some storage solutions which would help a decentralization. And that is going to be the big thing going forward as a solution for our country, where we have remote places where reaching the power lines is a big task. The next thing which I would talk about is, when we are talking of net zero, just reducing greenhouse emissions will not be sufficient. I think we are looking at green hydrogen as a big opportunity for us going forward. And we're just looking at the different affordable technologies which will bring the parity, though, which is not being seen as of today. But we feel by end of this decade, hydrogen will be a solution, not only for storage, but for energy production. And in the next stage, as Mr. Shah said, we are looking at transport and electricity being merged. And we feel there's an opportunity for hydrogen, not only for power, but it is also can be used in the transport sector. And we at TATA are looking at hydrogen opportunity, and along with the EV charging, we feel that from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, we can have a big network of EV charging, which will help in a big way to transition from present oil and gas powered transport vehicles to hydrogen powered or battery powered vehicles, which will help us to really move towards the net zero option that we have. So what we are looking at is turning disruptive threats into growth opportunities, testing new and innovative business models, and initiating reforms and restructuring are the key imperatives in the next 2 to 3 decades. And we are excited to be part of this new growth opportunities that the new challenges of net zero and decarbonized world is posing us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Namjoshi, for your address. It's very exciting to hear what TATA Power is doing for, when it comes to energy efficiency and reduction of its carbon footprint. This is really very inspiring. And you spoke about hydrogen, green hydrogen. That is also a new frontier that everybody is waiting with bated breath for. Because, living in Delhi, I can tell you, I do not like the polluted air. And we would like to have solutions come up quickly so that we are energy efficient, we are energy secure, as well as reduce our carbon footprint. Thank you so much, Mr. Namjoshi, for your address. Now, a joint venture of power sector PSUs, Energy Efficiency Services Limited, EESL, is implementing the world's largest non-subsidized energy efficiency portfolio across sectors like lighting, buildings, e-mobility, smart metering, and agriculture at a scale that no organization has been able to achieve. We are honored to have with us Shri Arun Kumar Mishra, Chief Executive Officer, Energy Efficiency Services EESL, who will be giving us the next keynote address. Please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Mishra.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. And thank you, Iton Media, for organizing this workshop. I truly believe that the time for Indian choices has come, and net zero is the right bandwagon as far as world is concerned, where we can make a big difference. At EESL, the primary concept has been that this is a service company which will enable choices which are otherwise thought as difficult to or non-sustainable as far as organizations are concerned. So we started this journey some 10 years back when we unlocked the potential of, say, energy, carbon saving and energy saving for municipalities as well as buildings in terms of energy efficient lighting, so much so that the program itself was market transformative from a situation where LED bulbs were costing more than 20 times a normal bulb. Now they are well within the compete range, and it becomes a first choice whenever you and me are going and using the changing lighting in our houses. Why I bring that topic in the beginning is that we firmly believe the transformation is most effective when it is embraced by the consumer. And as far as organizations are concerned, they are more or less governed by the market dynamics or by regulators' desire. So we have been regulated by the desire of our nation that we will be net zero by certain date. We have been desired to reduce our carbon intensity by initially 30%, now 45%. And those are the regulatory requirements. And when we started our street light or LED Ujala program, we had a regulatory requirement of reaching a certain yardstick by 2015. But the success of the program went beyond everyone's imagination. What we wanted to achieve in 7 years, we actually achieved in 4 years. And that's the kind of intervention and transformation which we truly believe will make India the market leader. Having said that, let us focus on what's the transformation, what is happening in energy sector. There are three transformations which are happening, if I can put them in perspective. As far as the utility companies are concerned, there is a transformation of load generation balancing. The balance of power is going to shift from supply side to the demand. And that shift will be brutal in terms of the people who are managing the grid, how they try to manage the load generation within those seconds and minutes from a control footprint of, let's say, 10,000 nodes of generator and big switching stations to hundreds of millions of consumer and consumption endpoints. You cannot plan. You can definitely plan 2,000 generating stations. You can plan 1,000 nodes switching, but you cannot plan millions in milliseconds. So you actually do not plan. You predict. And the prediction is well governed if you have the data points, the trend. And the trend is known to you if you have monitored the granularity. And that transformation is where EESL has already invested its energy in terms of unlocking the potential of smart meters. So you know what's the consumption pattern, and the institutions can build capacities for bringing in load generation balance from actions at the load side and not necessarily on generation side. The second transformation which is happening is that everyone is conscious of their energy. So that consciousness brings in a challenge that the devices and the products which are available to the consumer, they should be better than the best in terms of what they consume, their carbon footprint, and in inter alia delivers a value for money. And that's an area where ESL has been very active in bringing the new technologies to the market, be it super efficient energy, so super energy efficient air conditioner, be it the chiller, be it is industry specific solutions, and not only bringing those as a niche market, but scaling them up so that they are within the reach of majority of consumers. And that's an area the transformation will have unpredictable impact in terms of load pattern, in terms of the growth of demand, in terms of the ability for consumers, consumer groups, or small energy systems to be independent of the grid. And that transformation will have its own set of challenges. And of course, the third transformation is ever connected world and a transformation in expectation of the current generation, where gone are the days when your and my generation was forgiving the utility company for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, or even 1 hour interruption. No, that's not at all acceptable. Now the consumer needs power. They need power continuously. They need power with quality. And that transformation has its own set of impact. And that impact will be far reaching in deciding winner and loser for the utility companies. But that is most exciting from my perspective, that will also shape the future leaders in the energy sector, the leaders which will transform not only the Indian electric, electricity as well as energy sector, but will be a force to reckon with worldwide, who may or may not have the same set of diverse exposure, the challenges in terms of price points, challenges in terms of diversity of load, challenges in terms of the choices available, will enable, no, I'll not say dominance, but I'll say Indian choices becoming the de facto choices around the world. So I'll call professionals to rededicate themselves to reinvent what we can do for serving this most complex, evolving, exciting, and expanding market. And once we address this, the solutions will be flexible. They will be having the depth and the breadth to serve any market in the world. And service is the only industry which will work as far as flexibility to the emerging solutions because of net zero or global warming is concerned. And service professionals will excel and will be the most sought after. The government of India decided early on with the phase, and the CPSUs have set up a real challenging environment for EESL executives to perform. And while we are at work, we are also discovering the next generation's sweet spot as far as Indian energy professionals are concerned. So I look forward to wider connect with the industry and offtake of more energy efficient solutions, not only in India, but around the world, where the choices will be local, but the services with service potential is global, and that will be well served through the digital technologies, irrespective of where you are. Thank you. And my apologies for disturbance as far as focus of my camera is concerned. I have not yet been able to complete my journey. Thank you for the patience.
Thank you, Mr. Mishra, for joining us. We are very grateful to you for having taken the time. Okay, Mr. Mishra, if it's possible, could you answer one question? Because the budget has come out with
Yes.
with the battery swapping plan. How do you see this working out in our country, given that efforts are already underway to get EV charging stations set up across at least the major metros? What kind of message does this give to those in setting up the EV charging infrastructure in the metro?
I missed some part of your question, so if you do not mind, can you repeat? What I heard was that you wanted to know the scenario and its play with the what has already evolved in terms of battery swapping policies, right?
Yes, sir. I want to understand what is the logic behind and how could it play out in our country, the battery swapping plan, because we already have efforts and investments being made into EV charging. So how will both of these play out in our country? Should I go to a charging station if I have an electric vehicle, or should I just replace my battery? Will both of these choices remain, or one will work over the other? What do you think will be in the future?
Let me capture some of the things, background for you. One, yes, we are
So if
talking
possible,
about
if could you turn on your video as well?
yeah, my video is on.
Yeah, sir, we can see you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So let me capture some of the works for you. We are at a critical stage where three things are happening. Yes, the government is taking big steps in terms of enabling e-transport. So the initial wave of steps have been putting their money behind EVs. EESL's EV business is a case in point, putting their money in enabling EV chargers. And of course, that has had some success, but not what was targeted. We are nowhere near the thousands and millions which we were looking for. So if anyone has any fear that we have invested and we may or now we are changing course, not really. The market is in its formative stage. In any case, vehicles is a business which as at consumption end it transforms every 10 years. At infrastructure end, um, even we have seen in our lifetime 2 or 3 transformation as far as the petrol pumps are concerned. So those transformations wave in 5, 7, 15 years time period will play out. So the change will not be a loss of what we have already done, but it is one more thread to enable the overall market. Second thing which I would like to say is that we have a large ecosystem of battery service providers which we have been using in our inverters. It has been a challenge to get stable power supply, but then it has been an opportunity for inverter as well as the alternate power suppliers for our homes and businesses. And there is an ecosystem which does exist, and we will look forward to them transforming themselves, if not for four-wheeler, for two-wheeler and three-wheeler. I can anticipate there will be 3, 4, 5, and number of entrepreneurs who will be coming around to, even if the manufacturers are not, say, giving you a swappable battery, you will find solutions. I
Mhm.
bank on these innovators. They will transform the market like anything. Third part is parallelly, we have PLI linked scheme for battery, and that those battery manufacturers have been given one more blueprint that how they can innovate and can make a big difference. So while there are successful EVs, a couple of them, and their second generation is on the road, we look forward to at least 4 or 5 more EV manufacturers, and they may as well jump on for the battery swapping. And with the entire ecosystem, we may have a transformation. But I'm not looking for A or B. What I see is India has always been a multicultural and multi-solution place, and that will remain in the initial phase in this area as well. So I look forward to all the innovation, learning, and truly transformational journey as far as transport transformation is concerned and e-transport is concerned. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Thank you so much for sharing with us your vision of what the future could be for electric mobility. The latest developments in the budget, where EV swapping idea with interoperability standards coming in soon. This is something that is only going to help hasten the adoption of electric vehicles in our country. And Mr. Mishra saying that those who have sunk in the investments into EV charging needn't worry. There'll be enough demand for charging as well as swapping of batteries when more and more electric vehicles come on our roads. Thank you so much, Mr. Mishra, for joining us, and thank you for sharing your views on what lies ahead as far as electric mobility is concerned. Now, please put your hands together and welcome Shri Arun Goyal, member, Central Electric Regulatory Commission, CERC. A former IS officer, he has more than 34 years of wide-ranging experience, particularly in the areas of power, finance, infrastructure, trade, and industry. He has extensive experience in all spheres of the power sector, with 3 tenures in Delhi's power sector during different stages of its transformation. Please welcome Shri Arun Goyal.
Thank you, Anisha. Thank you, everyone, and very good morning to all. Being the last speaker of the inaugural session, I think much has already been said, but I think it's been a great opportunity to hear the previous speakers. And let me, at the outset, thank the organizers of this Energy Leadership Conclave for giving me this opportunity and interact with senior thought leaders in the energy sector. I also personally feel that the theme of the inaugural session, the new energy landscape, road to net zero, is very apt in the backdrop of recently held 26th conference of parties in Glasgow and new developments that are taking place on the renewable energy front. When our Honorable Prime Minister made this commitment that will be net zero by 2070, he also set two, I would say, immediate targets for us. One is that reaching a non-fossil fuel energy capacity of 500 gigawatt by 2030. Another was fulfilling 50% energy requirements via renewable energy by 2030. Another was reducing CO2 emissions by 1 million tons by 2030. And another was reducing carbon intensity 0.45% by 2030. We heard Mr. Mishra just before me. I think we have made very remarkable progress in promoting renewable energy in the last few years. In August last year, the total installed renewable energy capacity in India crossed the milestone of 100 gigawatt. I mean, at present, in terms of installed capacity, India stands at 4th position in the world in RE capacity, 5th in solar, and 4th in wind. And this all has been done at a very, very rapid pace. Our massive LED bulb campaign is also reducing emissions by more than 40 million tons annually. India has also set an ambitious target of replacing 30% of its automobile fleet with electric vehicles within next decade. So what I would try to do is to give a little broad perspective of the government on the issue, and as well as what as regulators we feel what needs to be done. So let us look at the broad picture of the power sector. So at present, we have about 393 gigawatt of installed generation capacity in India, and the share of fossil-based installed capacity is about 60%. That is roughly, I would say, 235 gigawatt, and the remaining 40%, nearly 150 gigawatt, is non-fossil fuel based. So it is projected that installed capacity will increase more than 800 gigawatt the next 10 years. Thus, just see, thus we are going to add more generation capacity in next 10 years than what we have done in the past 70 years. And moreover, most of this capacity will come from the renewable energy. Now, when we are going ahead with renewable energy at such a massive pace, there are many challenges. The first one I would say is the decentralized nature of the energy sources. And it's very, challenging for integrating such vast amounts of renewable energy into the grid. It requires large investments in the transmission system. And there is another challenge here that while we can set up a renewable generating plant, say a solar plant within about 18 months, but it takes nearly 3 years to add transmission lines. Further, it is becoming more and more difficult for acquiring land for the transmission lines and also getting right-of-way permissions. So I feel that building adequate transmission systems for the new renewable energy capacity in a time-bound manner is going to be quite challenging. Another challenge on the renewable energy front is the intermittent and unreliable nature of the solar installation and unpredictability of the wind speeds. It makes solar and wind energy alone unfit for 24/7 power supply. So if we have to have large penetration of these sources, there is a need to focus on combined hybrid systems and decentralized agency storage systems so that we are able to have round-the-clock renewable power. So we are likely to see a lot of action in front of energy storage technologies, particularly battery storage systems. So a lot on this has already been said by the previous speakers that what kind of technologies are likely to come about. Our Prime Minister has also announced National Hydrogen Mission on the country's 75th Independence Day last year. The aim is to develop India into a global hub for developing hydrogen and fuel cell technologies and promote green hydrogen production and export it in a big way. At present, in our country, the most of the hydrogen that is being produced uses natural gas and is for use in refinery and fertilizer industries. So this is not termed as green hydrogen. So India's strategy in the next years is to green the present hydrogen usage and as well as expand the use of hydrogen in new areas such as transportation, power, and blending this hydrogen into gas grids. Green hydrogen is expected to help India make a quantum jump on the climate front and in energy self-reliance. The government is aiming to create green hydrogen economy that operates at a scale just like it did for renewables in the last 6-7 years. While we are talking about net zero, I think it's also important that I talk about the financial viability of distribution utilities. So I think our all ambitions of net zero may not be fulfilled until and unless we have a distribution system or distribution utilities which are financially viable. Distribution segment has continued to be the weakest link in the power supply chain for many years now. The most important aspect here is to have cost-reflective tariffs which are determined in a fair and transparent manner by the regulators without considering any subsidy. Once the tariffs are determined which are cost-reflective, thereafter the state governments are free to give subsidy to a set of consumers as it wants. It should not, also it's important over here that these announcements that subsidy shall be given by the state governments are not mere announcements, but the subsidy is given in full and in a timely manner. In addition to that, we have always been talking about that discoms also need to improve their operational parameters such as billing efficiency, collection efficiency, and I also feel that they require to invest heavily into technology, particularly IT. Uh, Another important aspect is that of assured and timely payments to the renewable energy generators, so that the delays in the payments do not adversely impact future investments in the renewable energy, and this does not lead to RE prices increases due to risks involved. Uh, there is also a lot of talk about privatization of distribution, as privatization has worked reasonably well in urban centers. Like having worked in Delhi's power sector for 3 tenures, and particularly being closely involved in privatization, and after seeing that it goes through, uh, I can say that privatization has worked quite well in urban centers. However, I still feel that privatization of distribution involving large-scale rural areas will continue to remain a challenge in the Indian context. And here I feel that there will be continued role of public sector distribution utilities. So in order to meet this ambitious target of net zero by 2070, the policy framework of the government and the regulatory framework which is put forward by the regulators should move in tandem. In short run, state electricity regulatory commissions have to ensure that RPO obligations are met by the DISCOMs, timely payments are made to the renewable power generators, and also that open access regulations are implemented in letter and spirit. So we at CERC also have endeavored to provide the required regulatory framework to promote and integrate renewable energy into our grids. I like to just mention few of the things that have already been done and what further steps are being taken at CERC. CERC has already notified regulations on renewable energy certificates with the aim to encourage RE capacity in potential states. The Commission is now working on new draft regulations on renewable energy certificates, keeping in view developments in the sector and to promote new RE technologies. The CERC's deviation settlement mechanism has special dispensation for wind and solar generators. Considering intermittent and unpredictable nature of renewable energy, and in order to facilitate integration of RE generation into the grid, there is a special dispensation in the new regulations on DSM that are under finalization. So these draft regulations had been published some time back, and we have received a lot of stakeholder comments. We also had stakeholder consultation on them, and they are under finalization. Similarly, for the states, Forum of Regulators has prepared model regulations on forecasting, scheduling, and deviation settlement of wind and solar generating stations. So these are the model regulations which we expect the different state commissions to adopt. With effect from 1st June 2020, as you all are aware, Commission also introduced the framework of real-time markets to provide required flexibility in the market while ensuring optimal utilization of the available surplus capacity in the system. I'm happy to say that this has been quite successful, and we are seeing growing volumes of transactions in real-time market. In the last year, 1 year or so, many different type of green contracts have been introduced in the power exchanges so as to provide additional avenues of short-term transaction in RE power. CERC has also notified ancillary services regulations. At present, these services are being provided from regional generating stations whose tariff is determined by CERC. That is, their section 62 projects, or where the tariff is determined by the CERC. They take care of balancing requirements due to intermittent sources of power like wind and solar. Now here also the Commission is in the process of redesigning our ancillary services regulations through market mechanism, We already had a detailed stakeholder consultation in this regard, and these are also under finalization. Lastly, I would like to point out about the much awaited and path-breaking general network access regulations that are now available in the public domain. These have been formulated based on our past experience and keeping in view ambitious renewable energy targets that we have set for ourselves. We, as the Commission, look forward to receiving valuable comments of the stakeholders in this regards. So, friends, the way progress has been made in adding renewable energy to our energy mix during the last few years, the target set by Honorable Prime Minister of meeting 50% of our energy requirements via renewable energy by 2030 is very much doable. However, we all stakeholders in power sector have to work together in close coordination to see to it that these targets are achieved. So I am sure that this conclave, with very well thought out sessions on contemporary and relevant topics, will come out with innovative, useful, and effective suggestions, which will be also helpful both the policymakers and as well as to the regulators. So in the end, let me wish all success for the event. Thank you, organizers, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goyal, for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you with us on this platform. Mr. Goyal, I would request you if you can please answer a couple of questions some of the participants have sent us, having heard the speakers so far. So one of the questions that has come in, now you started with net zero. So one of the questions that has come in is, without mandatory regulation, it is not possible to promote net zero across all sectors. What do you feel about this, sir? Do you think हमारी कंट्री में सिर्फ डंडा काम करता है, जब तक डंडा नहीं मारोगे तो काम नहीं चलेगा? Because there are responsible corporates who have set up their own goals. They say we will do this, but that doesn't mean everybody will do. To achieve our net zero goals, do we need some mandatory rules and all? Mr. Goyal, you're on mute. Request you to unmute yourself.
Well, these targets have been set for 2070. So as we have seen when we have promoted renewable energy, and initially when the targets were set, I mean, they look very much unachievable. Like I mentioned, that in last August, we achieved 100 gigawatt of renewable energy. So that was something which was unthinkable a few years back. I think the time is on our side, and the way Vijay is progressing in all sectors, things are very much difficult. Of course, slowly and gradually, the mandates would also come. So I think we should take cue from what we have done in the renewable energy, and the things would happen in the net to achieve the targets of net zero also.
All right. Sir, another question that is coming is, are there any plans to benchmark energy efficiency in data centers, in hotels, in government buildings, or on university campuses?
I would say that, I mean, at present, we are not working as a regulator, as a central regulator, we are not working on it. But yes, I think it's an area of concern, I mean, for which the regulations can come up in the years to come. Yeah.
You anticipate they'll come through, sir? How quickly?
I mean, I would be frank on this, that we are not working on it at present.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Goyal, for joining us and sharing with us the plans that lie ahead for all our utilities, for distributors, and what we can look forward to, a world where we have private as well as public utilities working together to service the needs of all customers. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Anisha, and thank you for this wonderful session. Thank you.
So there you have it, our inaugural session for the Energy Leadership Conclave, where we've heard eminent leaders talk about the challenges that lie ahead in India's energy sector, what progress is being made, and the hopes and the vision they have for the future. We're now going to slip into a short break. There's lots coming up for you. in the entire day. We have a lot of thought leaders joining us, debating, discussing many topics in the hours ahead, be it smart utilities, be it agile O&M, lots and lots coming up. We will slip into a break at this point in time and we'll reconvene at 11:15. Do use this time to network with your peers on the platform. So grab your coffee or the breakfast that you have been waiting to have and come right back at 11:15. We'll see you then.